Well, hey, good evening, everybody. I almost said good morning. How are we doing tonight? You guys doing good? A couple of woos. There we go. We like that. Well, welcome tonight to the Coffee Network panel. I'm going to let Coy come up, and he's going to introduce a little bit more. But really, we're grateful that you guys are here tonight and the support for the Coffee Network, and excited to be able to share a little bit more about the Coffee Network and how that's going to look. And Coy's kind of got his whole intro to get there, but you're going to get to hear from a couple others as well, too. So put your hands together for Coy.
I forgot my microphone. So I'm going to sit down. Are you okay if I sit down? Yeah. Are you okay if I sit down? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to sit down. All right, if you'd like to grab some coffee right now, feel free to get up right now and grab a coffee. Why don't you all stand for a moment and say hi to somebody next to you and tell them you're glad they came tonight. And if you want to grab a coffee, go ahead and go out and grab a coffee and bring that in with you.
Yeah. I'm excited you're here and repping the Rays. Good. Right now? I have no idea.
All right, go ahead and grab a seat. If you came tonight hoping for a worship service, this will be just as good or better, so we're glad you're here with us and you're staying with us. I did not memorize this tonight because I took the time to make sure I got my message in my heart, in my brain. So tonight I'm going to do a little more reading to you, and then we'll get into a chance to talk to some of those who have been a part of this. So what we've done tonight is we put together a panel of people who have been working on a project for an entire year. And the project we've been working on is called the Coffee Network. And so tonight, our goal is to give you a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the development of this ministry that we believe is going to be critical to who we are as a church. Our hope is that tonight we'll give you a clear picture of what it is and why all of you should be a part of it. So I'm going to start by telling you the story of this ministry's inception. So it wasn't long ago, JC actually asked me, he's like, Coy, can you write out the story of the origin of why we talk about coffee so much at Somos? So let me read this story to you. Coffee at Somos didn't start with coffee, because back then I didn't even drink coffee. Anybody with me? I did not drink coffee. It was disgusting. But now I drink it. It started with a vision to create a church where a person's story matters. So let me read that again. Coffee at Somos didn't start with coffee. It started with a vision to create a church where a person's story matters. In the weeks leading up to our very first service at Somos Church, I was seeking guidance from God for our future church. And I was drawn to the stories of Jesus whenever Jesus would engage with a person and their story. In the middle of a crowd of people, Jesus would look at a distressed person in the eyes, and he would respond to them on a heart level. And I thought, that's what Somos Church will do. And then this phrase came to me. The phrase came to me that we as Somos Church will exist to uncover and support the God-given value of every person's story. I thought we will be a people with a genuine desire to know each other. We will hear one another's story, and we will encourage one another to continue writing a better story with God by connecting with people and resources that help us grow and live better lives for others. But the question as I was thinking about this before we even became a church was, well, how are we going to do this? And the answer that came to me was with an invitation to meet. So from day one, our website has invited people to meet with us. From weekend one, our pastors have invited people to fill out a card or a text, a keyword to meet with us. And Brooklyn and I and some of our staff have met for coffee with literally thousands of people. Like, we're not a church of thousands. but we have met literally with thousands of people. The problem is, though, we had nowhere to meet as a church. We didn't have a building or an office. So what we did as a staff is we met with people at coffee shops. And meeting at a coffee shop meant I needed to learn how to drink coffee. So over coffee, our pastors have been blessed to hear thousands of stories. God has given us the opportunity to bear witness to the Holy Spirit's work in the lives of so many people. It is God's gift to us as pastors that we are able to help the storytellers uncover God's presence in their past. And then we get to encourage them to be resilient in the pursuit of God's calling in their life, in the present and the future. So here at Somos, God uses coffee to connect people to each other, connect people to God, and connect people to God's mission for us to be a church who is for Lakeland. So through coffee, God helps us see our own stories in light of God's story, which brings healing to places of hurt and trust, to places where hope lives. And so we really want to be a church that's not so much about coffee, the drink, but about what happens when you sit across the table from one another. Like that really is the heartbeat of who we have been from the beginning. I think that's the only way that I know how to do ministry as the pastor that you all get to come and see here at this church is if I can't know you by name and if I don't know your story, it doesn't matter how many people come to this church. The problem that I have faced is that I can't get to know all of you. Like it's been impossible. And, you know, the first time I met JC, we had coffee together, and he talked about the things that he had envisioned for being a part of a church. One of the first times I talked to Mitchell and Bailey was over coffee with Brooklyn. There are some of you in this room who really the first time we ever got together was I drank a coffee and you had a water. But we got together, and there's been moments where it's been really awkward. Like, what are we supposed to do now? But because I feel so called to do this as a leader of a church who follows a God who came in the form of a son named Jesus, who stopped and listened to people's stories, I've learned if I just take enough time that so many of you will tell me things that I didn't even think would be possible in people's lives. There are so many moments in my life having coffee. I think Brooklyn would testify to the same thing, where I have walked away from having coffee with someone and I thought to myself, how could somebody make it through life like that? Meaning, how could they have survived the circumstance if they've had to go through in their life and still want to come to church and believe in God? And it gives me more faith, and it helps me understand that God has done some amazing thing in people's lives. And it connects me to who they are, and then I can start imagining how they can be a part of doing some amazing things in this world. Because there's something I believe about all of us. I believe that all of you in your past story, God has given you two things. God has given you a strong yes and a strong no. And what God has given you is a strong yes to say, there are some good things that God has done in your life in this world, and you're going to say yes to making that happen in somebody else's life in this world. And then God gives you also a strong no. And that no is, no, I'm not going to let bad things happen to anybody else in the world like that happened to me. But I believe we can't get to that together if we don't sit and share and listen to stories together. So we have created the Coffee Network for this purpose, so that you all get to experience what I have experienced. That you all have the chance to sit together with somebody else across the table and be a part of uncovering and supporting what God wants to do through somebody else's life. The main phrase you're going to hear tonight is that our goal is to connect the unconnected. If there's anything that I've learned as a pastor in church, I've learned that oftentimes people go to a church, they may attend a church, but what they often say is, I don't feel connected. And so we have been trying to figure out as a church called Somos, what's the best way for us to connect people who are feeling unconnected? And I'm convinced that it's through sitting together with one another, sharing a coffee, and sharing our stories. So that's what we've been building for an entire year. So tonight, I'm going to invite up our team, and we're going to talk about it together. So everybody come up, and the rest of you, clap your hands for them as they come up. So we have Mitchell. Everybody say hi to Mitchell. Mitchell joined our staff in January. We have Shirley. Everybody say hello to Shirley. She likes to fight over chairs with Mitchell. They get into it all the time. We have to work. Everybody say hi to JC. You see him behind the keyboard. Everybody say hello to Lonnie. And also Bailey over here. And so everybody here in some way is involved in a ministry here at our church in some paid capacity, in some form right here. And so we together have been working on this idea of the Coffee Network. I believe that having coffee together and creating this network is going to be one of the most authentic, valuable ministries that we have. I believe that it's going to bear witness to the desires and challenges that so many of you have in your stories, which is going to give us the chance to encourage and help each other say yes to the work that God wants to do in and through us. And so we're going to talk about how this has come to be. So this is where JC comes in. JC really has put the most amount of work into this. And so rather than tell the story for him, JC is going to share how he got involved in this whole project. So tell us, JC, how did you get involved?
Hey, everybody. So it all started with me actually being extremely hungry to serve here at this church. I've always had a passion for the local church. And when I experienced Somos, I knew this was the place I wanted to be, and I knew this was a place I wanted to invest my time and energy. So I said, Coy, give me something to do. Give me things to do. So he did. He told me about this whole coffee idea. And at first, I was very confused. I asked a lot of questions, got a lot of things wrong. But then I took a shot at what I felt like was in the ballpark of what he wanted. And so here we are, the Coffee Network.
Yeah, so he started. Tell them when you started. I can't remember. I mean, it's been over a year. I keep saying a year, but tell them when you truly started working on this.
Yeah, so I started as an intern, I think, in January-ish of last year. But we probably really started with the Coffee Network and the ideation and stuff in about March of last year.
So at first, JC was doing all this work on his own. We're like, JC, you do that. You go, man. You work on that. But then over time, others of us got involved. And so I want the others to share a little bit about the early conversations that they remember having and thinking about and planning with JC, the Coffee Network. So I'm going to start with you, Lonnie. Like, tell us some of those early conversations. Look at Lonnie. She's terrified right now.
So early conversations, JC came to us and asked us to be a part of this group, and it was very exciting. JC is a very system-driven document person. Like, he has a document for everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. So it was really cool once I started getting into what he had created to see the time and the effort and the attention to detail that he had put into making coffee a success.
So Mitchell, what would you add to that? Those early conversations, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, it was really exciting to get to hear the vision. And a lot of those early conversations were mostly the vision and the direction for coffee. Like you've shared a little bit of how can we build off of what the staff at Somos Church is already doing and empower you guys to be able to participate in coffee and take more ownership and belonging in the Coffee Network, which is what it is now. And so a lot of those early conversations were regarding that. And I remember leaving those conversations and us meeting and us even continuing to talk about the Coffee Network and being like, I don't think JC realizes how big this is going to be for Somos Church and what this can accomplish for us. And so I just started beginning dreaming about, man, how many more people are going to have their story known, are going to be connected to people that they're sitting next to. They're not just strangers. They're not just people they see every week and say, hey, how's it going? Yeah, good to see you. Good week at work? Yeah, awesome, cool. But are going to actually know stories and know what's going on in their lives and being able to lean on one another and depend on one another as they're going through things. And so it really captured my heart, and I just fell in love with what the Coffee Network was going to become and how I could be a part of helping it launch.
Yeah. So we met, and we met and we met, and we reviewed documents, didn't we? We all reviewed documents. Brooklyn even jumped in because she's our in-house editor for everything. And so we met and reviewed documents that JC had created, and he put these systems together. And so I want some of them to tell a story of what it was like working through those documents. So JC or Mitchell, which one want to go first? Mitchell, you go first.
Yeah, looking at the documents was my first glimpse into the mind of J.C. Harris, and I was blown away and taken back by it. Like Lonnie said, J.C. has a document for everything, and he's so detail-oriented. And so one of the first documents that he gave us had a table of contents to it that had like 12 different chapters and sections, and it was like over 20 pages long. And I was like, how did you do that? I worked semesters long to be able to write a theology paper and could barely get 15 pages, and it feels like you just knocked this out so quick. And so I was taken back by it, but I was really grateful for how much detail and how much thought was poured into it, that it's not just something where like, hey, this is a cool idea, let's see what happens. It's like, this is a really cool idea that we want to do well and do with excellence for our church, so that it's not just something that starts and fizzles out, but it's something that can start and really grow and really impact people. And so looking at those documents, I laugh about it now and look back at it, but I was able to go in and took a couple days to read through it and make my comments, and took a couple more days to be able to go back through it again. But it was awesome.
And so, JC, give us your take.
Yeah, I was terrified because writing was not my strongest subject in school, but I knew I needed to write in order to get all of the thoughts out about, this program and it being the fullness of what it needed to be. So I was super scared for all of these people to read the 20 plus pages of work that was put into this. But and the reason for that is because I actually grew up in a lot of churches that felt a need for change, but when it came down to actually making the change, nothing ever got off the ground. This is not the first ministry that I wrote at least 15 pages worth of a program for. So I was just scared that they would read it, they would hate it, and I almost was more scared that they'd want to do it, to be honest with you. But I'm grateful for the experience and the hours that they also put into editing and just commenting and giving their reviews for this great thing that you guys are finding out about.
Yeah. So eventually, we decided we need to test this out. And so we came up with what we called a beta test. And so we chose key people to be the first ones to practice it on. And Shirley was one of the first ones that we asked to step into that. We put her through the process, and she really didn't know anything about it. And she said yes to doing it anyways. But our hope was that Shirley going through it would teach us something about what we need to change, what really works well. How can we make this the best we can make it? So I want Shirley to tell us what it was like for her being one of the first ones to enter into the Coffee Network.
Well, when Coy gave me this assignment, he said, tell the good, bad, and the ugly. There really wasn't any ugly, but I started, we have a staff meeting every Saturday, and I started coming to the 2:30 staff meeting, and I saw this group of people, sometimes 10 people around the table, and they were busy at work, and I had no clue what they were doing. And then one day I came and I heard my name, and I'm going, okay, this is getting serious. But as it turned out, I was going to be the tester, the beta tester for the Coffee Network. And I was great with that until I was handed the 28 page booklet to read and understand. But in all seriousness, I watched these people work so many long, hard hours. And when I went through the training myself and then started actually working the program the way it was designed, I could truly say in my heart of hearts, this is perfect for Somos Church, and I mean that with everything I am.
Good. Well, to the best of our ability, as we were creating this, we came up with keywords as a metaphor to help us make sense of this. So I want you to hear us talking about those keywords that we came up with and give a little bit of explanation. So I'm going to start with JC. Will you tell us, will you explain these keywords that we have, in particular the two that are the strongest? Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first term or keyword that you'll hear resonate throughout the Coffee Network is SIP leader. It's SIP leader. It's an acronym. The S stands for story loving, I stands for intentional, and P just stands for person. So it's a story loving, intentional person that is also a leader, and the entire responsibility or essence of a SIP leader is someone that initiates and facilitates coffee. So I see you before or after service, and we hit it off. I'm like, hey, would you like to go to coffee? And then you go to coffee, and y'all have coffee, you're a SIP leader. If you've done all of that, you all are SIP leaders. Clap it up for yourselves. But that's the first term. The second term is bean, and so it's kind of, it's really, this one was difficult, but it's supposed to fit the coffee theme. SIP leader, you sip coffee, all that kind of stuff. Second term, bean, it's an acronym as well. B stands for belonging, E stands for engagement, A stands for authenticity, and then N stands for network. And that term is basically used to summarize the journey of someone that goes through the coffee program, and we also use it to summarize the people that we're meeting with as well.
And so we were talking about this in our building of it, we're gonna be calling people beans. If you become a SIP, then you're gonna have a bean. And we were wondering, is this gonna offend anybody? Like who's your bean? And we just could not come up with another word.
I'd be your bean any day.
So Bailey, tell us about the bean word. You were part of that process.
Yeah, so we did in all of our early meetings, we did a lot of homework assignments. So one of those was we all had to come up with a name. We had decided on SIP, I'm pretty sure, and JC, that was kind of his original idea. And I think originally Bean, I think I was the only one that was kind of on board with that because I liked the acronym style. And as silly as it may seem, because it's just a name, there was a lot of conversation and thought put into it. And the N of Bean was the hardest one to come up with. I, in my homework assignment, came up with the rest of them, but I came up with intentional for N as trying to be creative, but intentional was already used in SIP. So, but there was a lot of thought going into those names, and I think the reason I liked the acronyms for SIP and for Bean was because I felt like it expressed the heart behind having coffee and what we do here, and just valuing hearing people's stories and sharing stories and building those relationships.
I'm just curious, can y'all remember, we talked about Bean so much. By a raise of hands up here, who was in favor of Bean? Raise your hand if were you in favor of Bean?
Opposed to it.
No, I think it was everybody but me. I was like, we cannot go with Bean, and they overruled me. Get over it. Well, if there's a tagline for the Coffee Network, it would be connecting the unconnected. That is the phrase that we want you to know. The Coffee Network is designed to connect the unconnected. When people come into church, one of our number one goal, at least here at Somos, is to ensure that there is a clear path for you to be somebody who moves from being unconnected to connected. And so what I want all of them to do right here with me is to, from their perspective, talk about what they think that phrase means. What does it mean to connect the unconnected? So, Lonnie, why don't you start with us?
So I think connecting the unconnected means taking the time and being open and available to people to hear their story. With that, the process, it seems long, but it takes that time to actually get to truly know someone and know their background and where they're coming from. So I think that we need that as people, to feel connected to others, to function in life. So that's what that means to me.
Yes, Shirley, from your perspective, tell us what it means to you to connect the unconnected.
Well, for as long as I've been involved in churches, I think one thing we hear a lot of is, I don't feel like I'm connected, or I wish I knew more people, but I'm so afraid to approach people I don't know, and different things like that. But the Coffee Network is designed so that just picking one person and inviting them to go and share a cup of coffee or a glass of water, whatever, can bridge that gap. And it's just so simple. Having been through it and having had my own bean as a SIP leader, I certainly proved that to be true. So I just feel like it's a good way to close the gap there.
JC?
I give a short and sweet definition because I've talked a lot already tonight. But I would say connecting the unconnected is transforming someone from just being seen to being known.
All right, Bailey?
I included that in my definition too, but a little more. I think connecting the unconnected is layered. And so I think it starts with like what we're doing here, where we're meeting with one person or we're meeting with them consistently and we're building relationship with them. And in doing so, you're getting to know someone and really know them, as opposed to just saying hello to them at a church service or how are you or how was your week. You know, there's more depth to it. But in doing so, and in turn, after building that relationship, you're able to connect them to others. So then they're connected to other people that they may have never met if they weren't meeting with you. And then in doing so as well, you get more involved and feel more connected to Somos and want to be involved in different ministry teams or events that we put on. And so I was definitely one of the people when we started coming to church here that like wanted to sit in the back and didn't want anyone to talk to me. But what I have discovered, and I think that what coffee does, like the community of Somos is making people like that, like me, feel known and valued and seen. And I think that coffee does that too, and it's just an extension of what we are at Somos.
Cool. Well, at this point in the timeline from when JC started in January of last year, we've continued to test this ministry and add new leaders to it. So JC, give us an update on where we're at right now in terms of SIP leaders.
Currently, we have about 12 to 13 people on our SIP leader roster.
So if you look at that, that means we have 26 people here at Somos Church who are taking the initiative to say, I want to connect you, and I want to feel connected myself. 26 people doing that, with 13 of them being leaders. So Mitchell, give us a vision for where you think this is headed in the fall.
Yeah, the Coffee Network is launching in the fall. Yeah, we are launching it, and kind of like they said, we've been doing trainings, and we've been talking about this for a long time, and there are SIP leaders who are having coffee with people right now, and it's happening. It's not just something that we have been working on and thinking through and tested and stopped and doing all that. And so really what we mean with the launch is that it's really an opportunity for our SIP leaders to introduce themselves to you and to reach out to you and to connect with you through our weekend services. And so in the fall, you may hear us talk a lot more about it from stage. You may hear a lot more conversations amongst you guys about the Coffee Network, about SIP leaders, about beans, and you may even have people approaching you and saying like, hey, it's been cool getting to connect with you. I've seen you a few times. Like, we've got a couple of interests. Like, let's try and sit down and have coffee together. And so don't be intimidated by that, but know that it's because people care about you and they care about your story and they want to hear your story and give you an opportunity for you to know that it's valued and that you're heard, and that it's an opportunity for you to get connected and even capture some of the bigger vision of what Somos Church is going to look like. And so people will be initiating conversations with you in the fall. You will have opportunities to do that. You will have opportunities to ask and find SIP leaders and get connected in that sense as well. And so we're really excited for it, and we can't wait for you guys to really get the full experience of what the Coffee Network is going to be.
So everybody here sitting up at this table has been involved actively in the Coffee Network for months, which means each of us have met with at least one person consistently over a certain period of time. And so what I want you to do is I want you to hear from them about their experience of, meeting with someone for coffee. And so what I've asked them to do is talk about one coffee meeting that left an impression on them. So Lonnie, tell us.
If you guys know me, family is incredibly important to me. So those conversations that I've had with the couple beans that I've been with stand out the most. And it's just so interesting to learn just the different family dynamics and how those people have grown up and how their family has affected them in their lives today. And I think that's been the conversations that have stood out the most for me, is just those family conversations and how much it affects.
So when you're having coffee, Lonnie, and you hear someone sharing with you about their family situation, and it sounds like you have empathy for them, like what does that inspire you to do? Like where does that lead you to?
It's a learning experience. I mean, I have kids of my own, so you hear, how, their growing up has affected them and what went into that, and it makes you, retract into like, okay, so am I make sure I'm not making those same choices, and it helps me grow as a mom.
So Shirley, tell us an experience that you've had that's had an impression on you meeting with people for coffee.
Well, when I met with my first bean over the course of over the course of months, and this is a process that doesn't happen quickly. It takes time to gain your trust in each other and feel comfortable in telling your stories. But in learning my person's story, it provided a brand new insight into how I could better encourage her. And then the opposite was true. When she learned my story, she then had a good basis to help encourage me. So what we both realized after the several months is that this whole process that we went through together formed a basis for a close and lasting friendship. And that's not to say it'll happen every time, but it certainly did. And it's a friendship I will have always and value dearly.
Okay. Bailey?
Yeah, I've met with like 3 different people so far. I'm currently meeting with somebody, and I think what I've learned has been more all-encompassing. It wasn't just like one coffee meeting, but the first time I met with somebody, I was like a little bit nervous. I put pressure on myself to say the right things and to not mess up and not like be awkward or anything like that. But I think what I've learned is that there's something so like humbling about getting to meet with somebody, because one, they're trusting you like with their story, but having coffee with somebody isn't an interview. So like the intention is not for me to come and meet with you and to just ask you a bunch of questions and that be the end of our conversation, because that doesn't build any kind of trust or relationship, And so I think what I have learned and experienced that has been so like wonderful for me is sharing parts of my story with people, and building that mutual trust and being able to relate to each other, and just understanding that in building a relationship, it is a two-way conversation. It's not so much an interview. And there's not so much pressure on yourself to be carrying that.
JC, Mitchell, would you guys add any impressionable times that you've had coffee with someone?
Yeah, I would just say it really opens up your mind to how connected we all actually are through our experiences as you get to talk. And it may be something completely different. I think of a couple of people that I had coffee with, and we grew up in different places, in different families, and the experiences we had, we were able to connect with. And it's like, man, yeah, that was like a huge anchor in my life, experiencing that, and you experienced something similar. And I never would have thought that, and I never would have gotten to know that if I hadn't taken the chance to sit down and have coffee and talk to you about that and open up myself, kind of like Bailey's saying, open up myself to you about my experiences as well. And so it really opens up your mind to how connected we all actually are through our experiences, and how none of us are alone in the things that we face or the things that we've gone through, or the victories even that we have, being able to celebrate those with everyone.
I'd say through the coffees that I've had, I've learned that the true power of story and getting to know someone, it truly develops this sense of compassion that I don't think is possible really to attain without sitting down to listen to someone and they listen to you. So it's not just a one-way street. It's a mutual exchange of storytelling, and sometimes it can be a little awkward if you are like socially awkward like myself sometimes or whatever. But once you get over those hurdles and you tap into a certain zone of like where you've come from, and it can even be lighter things like what are you into, all that kind of stuff, you recognize like, yo, there's something special about connecting with someone, and it does amplify, I believe, a worship environment. So when we come together as a church, it means something different when the person on your row is not just the person on your row anymore. That person's name is Amy, that person's name is Justin, and you know some of the things that they've been through, and you can have a real conversation. It just warms the environment up a lot. So that's kind of what coffee has done for me since I've been involved.
Yeah, is that good? Well, something I want you to think about, and then we're going to go into a chance for you to ask questions, and I hope y'all don't go silent. I'm hoping you will actually ask some questions. Is that I just wonder how many of you in a week or in a month take 30 minutes to sit down with anybody? Your spouse, your kids, a friend, a professor, anybody, a counselor. Like, I wonder how many of us, sit down and take 30 minutes with anybody. And the reason why I wonder that is not to be like, shame on you. It's like, that's how busy our lives are. Our lives are that busy. And I, as a pastor, something I've learned, I was talking to Lonnie about it, it's like, the moment when we all start to feel stress, and you can feel your body. Y'all know what stress feels like. You feel it in your own way. I feel it in my chest. Maybe some of you feel it in your back. I don't know. But you feel stress. And what's crazy is we were talking like stress and anxiety is actually a God-given experience, because God's telling your body to tell you you need somebody. But in our stress and our anxiety or whatever hard feelings we're going through, our tendency is to do what? What do y'all do? You withdraw from everyone. And so in the hardest moments of our life, rather than sit with someone and say, my body's telling me I need somebody to be with me through this, instead we withdraw from people. And so one idea for me is like, you see Jesus walking down the street in a busy situation, like he's invited to go have dinner with people who are going to trash him. Like he's invited by the religious leaders to come sit at their table so they can criticize him. And he knows that they can't defeat him in their arguments, and it's important to him to have a meal with them. But on the way to have a meal, he sees somebody, and he stops, and he engages in their story. Like in the biblical account, we just learn about Jesus reaching out and touching someone. But reaching out and touching someone is more than just this power that comes through Jesus' hand into somebody's body and heals them. That's Jesus engaging in their story. It's him offering, I'm a human being who will acknowledge your existence, and I'll stop what I'm doing, and I will be with you. And I think we're missing that in our culture today. And I think we're missing a lot of the opportunities that we have as human beings to heal and to find resilience through the hard things that we experience in life. I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was talking about the value of other people in our lives whenever we're going through hard things. And what it was saying is all of us need somebody who is bigger, stronger, smarter, and kinder who, when we're feeling like a mess, can settle us down. And I truly believe if we would allow ourselves to meet with other people in the church, that we would be able to offer that to one another. And we talk about miracles in the world today, and one miracle that we don't talk about is what happens in your brain when somebody offers you the chance to settle. Your brain physically heals from past hurt when somebody provides an environment for you to feel contained in your pain and saying that you're not alone. And so coffee isn't always about that. But I think as a church, we're missing the opportunity to be the church. Church isn't about a worship service. I love a worship service. Church isn't about coming together in the same space. I think we need to come together in the same space. But what church truly is being involved enough in each other's lives that we know when somebody in this church is going through something, and we have the ability to offer them the same thing that Jesus offered to those around them, which is the ability to say, I notice you, your story matters, and I'll be a part of it with you. And so that's really what we're hoping. We know that churches do small groups, and people like small groups, and to me, what we're trying to do is to shrink your small group down to 2. Because most small groups that I've been a part of, most people don't get to the place where they're actually getting the chance to tell their story. And so what a small group becomes is just another small church. And I like small groups. I just think we've missed a step. And the step that we've missed is acknowledging somebody right in front of you rather than this crowd that's around you. And so that's why we're doing the Coffee Network. That's why we put so much work into this. People will get involved in this. And so what I want to give you the chance right now is to ask any questions. So if you have a question, this won't be your last chance to ask a question, but if you have a question for us tonight, if something sounds confusing, or if you have a thought or a comment or whatever, would you please ask us? And Lonnie will give the microphone to Nate, and then he'll take it to them and let them speak in the microphone. Any questions? Raise your hand if you have a question. Brooklyn, you're going to have to start us off with a question.
I have not thought of a question. Okay, so my question is, how do people know who the SIP leaders are?
Good question. There is no way for you to know at this time. But here's one indicator. If you have someone that you're talking with and they just invite you to coffee, odds are they might be a SIP leader. And you feel me? So they might be someone that's interested in getting to know you more, not in a weird way. It's just literally to develop relationship with you and stronger connections in our church. That's kind of the only way we have right now, but we're working on some stuff by faith.
Luke, you have a question? Nate, will you take? Yeah, so everybody can hear his question.
Many times when someone wants to talk, there's a crisis going on and they need to talk right away. How are you equipped to do that?
I'll speak into this one. We have a training for anybody who is going to be a SIP leader, and we speak into a lot of things that could come up similar to that. And so we're trying to make this more fluid and organic than rigid and strict. And so really what we're trying to encourage you to do is, here are some boundaries that you can travel down this path, and here's some things we can equip you to be able to do and to respond. And so in a situation like that, we wouldn't want you, if somebody needed to meet with you and you as a SIP leader couldn't do it, then you would be able to reach out to one of us. But we also have in the training some things that you'd be able to respond. I mean, do you have anything to add to that, Mitchell, or anybody else?
Yeah, we equip all of our SIP leaders with some tools when it comes down to conversation. If you're talking with somebody that is going through something that is really serious, that is a crisis, We don't encourage our SIP leaders to become counselors. That's one of the biggest things. We're not commissioning a bunch of therapists or advisors. Now, if the person you're meeting with asks for advice, we advise our SIP leaders to say, what you're going through, I don't think is necessarily something that needs my advice. Probably this is something we should pass on to a pastor who is trained in counseling. So usually if we deal with somebody that's actually going through something that's bigger than what a SIP leader probably can deal with, we say, we'd love for you to talk to Coy or talk to Brooklyn or talk to Pastor Mitchell or someone like that who's definitely more equipped to help walk you through whatever you're going through.
Yeah, and SIP leaders will be a text away. Most of the communication will happen through text and connecting there, and SIP leaders are encouraged to be able to check in and follow up kind of every week in weekend services and then through the week as well too. So if something does come up, if you are a being and something difficult comes up in your life, it's like, man, this is hard. You're encouraged to reach out to your SIP, and like we've said, our SIPs are trained to know like where their boundaries are and what they can do for you in support and prayer and meeting, but also in referrals to Coy or somebody else that's on staff, and even referrals to other places within the community as some of those things are coming up. We have like a SIP resource list that is for all of our SIPs to have access to for anything and everything that they may need to be able to refer to a being to be able to help assist with whatever may be going on.
Good question.
Yeah,
Joyce?
I just wanted to let people know, because I know most of you were a lot younger than me, but you don't have to think of this as an investment that you don't have enough time, because it's on your time, it's on your beans time. And JC hooked me up with a very young, sweet girl that I never would have met ever, because she goes to church on Sunday and everything. But we made it work because I would come after church on Sunday and meet with her, even though I came to church on Saturday. So don't think of this as one more thing I have to do. Think of it as an opportunity to get to know this person and that person. And really, to me, it's about making a friendship. I mean, it's I don't have anything more holy to say than that. It's just about being a friend to somebody.
Good. Any other questions? All right, we got a question right there. Is that Shane? Do I see Shane out there?
Yeah.
All right, Shane.
So, what inspired you to become a pastor?
Wow, all right. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a young boy, I was at church, and the pastor had an altar call. Y'all remember altar calls? They don't happen so much anymore. And I was just 4, and the pastor, we would go into church once a month as the kids. We had kids' church 3 times a month, adult church 1 time a month. And the pastor called for people to come forward, and I didn't ask my parents' permission to go forward. I just went forward, and they couldn't find me. And that was the first moment that I had where I felt like God was saying, Coy, you could do this. You could be a pastor. And that never really left me, Shane. So from the age of 4, that was always a part of my story. That's good. Any other questions? All right, we'll get one here, and then we'll bring it to you.
You said you have 13 SIP leaders. How do you see this growing in the future?
I love that question. He's asking, we have 13 now. How do we see it growing? I would love for every single person in our church to have one other person that you meet with on a regular basis. I would love it if we had every person in our church. A realistic goal, I think that we have would be 40 to 50 SIP leaders, hopefully by the fall.
I'd also like to share my experience as a bean.
As a bean? All right.
Yeah.
That's my bean right there, y'all. Bean merch coming soon, guys. Y'all just get ready.
Yeah. I moved here from Virginia, and I was part of a church in Virginia where they emphasized small groups, and I wasn't a joiner. It took me years before I even got involved in that. And small groups are different. The first one was like Pastor Coy said, you meet, go home, and there wasn't really a lot of deep stuff going on. Then that one broke up. I got invited to another one where it was a group of men, and where we were transparent with each other. Eventually, we open up, and I have to say, I developed lifelong friends in that small group. It was only 6, 7 guys, and I always tell my wife, I said, I never thought I'd ever be involved with a group of men where we're talking about God and we're holding each other accountable and things like that. So when I came here, that was my perspective, and I asked Pastor Coy about small groups. And he said, well, we don't do that here, maybe at some point in the future, but so I think this is perfect, and it has that feeling that I had with the small group I left in Virginia. And I think my experience so far has been comfortable. I'm sure that won't be everybody's experience, but it's been comfortable, and you get to sit down with somebody and get to know a person, discuss their concerns, their where they are in life, and share perspectives and stories. So I think this is great.
Good job, JC. All right.
He's an
You're
up-and-coming sip. Y'all just wait.
Yeah, we do have a question here.
Let me speak real quick into the growth of our SIP leaders as well too. That's one of the reasons we're doing this, is to tell you guys about it. But it's also you guys taking ownership. Coy did a series in the beginning of the year about how can we move from being a guest to an owner. How can we take ownership in some of these things? And so if you guys are interested in becoming a SIP leader, or even what that looks like, come talk to us. And we're having a SIP training in June where we're going to train all our new SIPs on a little bit more of the inner workings of the Coffee Network to help us with that launch. But ultimately, it's going through the Coffee Network, and it's more than just a program for you to get connected, but it's really a ministry team for you to experience the ministry that we believe God has called us to do at Somos Church, but also to hopefully have you capture that vision and you become a minister in that vision of becoming a SIP as well too. And so as we continue to meet with people and that goes on and people catch a glimpse of what God is wanting to do in and through our church, they begin to take ownership over that and begin to step into roles as SIP, moving from a being to a SIP, moving from a participant to an owner in what God has called us to do as a church.
That's good.
Yes, my question is, how do you help people that don't speak English?
That's a wonderful
And
question.
how do you get involved with them if they don't have transportation to go where you want to meet with them?
Good questions.
First one, we are taking Spanish-speaking SIP leaders. So if anybody here speaks Spanish, yeah, that's probably as good as we'll be able to get for that right now. So all of my Spanish speakers, hit me up after service today. To the second one, great question. I think there can be enough trust to provide transportation. So say I'm your SIP leader. I'm like, would you feel comfortable if I picked you up and we went to a coffee shop that's around the corner from where you stay or something like that? We've also thought about virtual coffees in the very early stages of what we were doing. So that's something that we're not opposed to bringing back up as well. So good questions.
Yeah. I mean, we do have, I believe, a growing amount of some of those people who are Spanish speaking. And so I think as they get more connected to the church, we'll have more people who do speak Spanish. But we also haven't tagged them yet and said, hey, you're it. We want you to be involved in this. So that gives us the awareness. So thank you. Yes, Brooklyn.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because it's a priority to like include everyone. We live in a world of beautiful technology, and I had a coffee with someone recently where I asked an AI like assistant on the internet to translate for me, and it worked. It was weird. We laughed a lot, but it worked. And another thing we could possibly do is the bean could bring a friend that's bilingual, and it creates like an extended opportunity. I think that's a really cool thing. It could help not only for you to be understood and heard, but also it could extend our community. So I feel like our ministry is so much bigger than just like face-to-face. I meet with a lot of college students who don't have transportation, and I just had one yesterday over FaceTime, and it was still just, there were tears, there was like stories, and of course, you know, we have to like make sure we're intentional, and like I had to let her know no one else is nearby. Like there's an element of trust that you give someone when you're on FaceTime or on Zoom, but don't let like this idea of like meeting in a coffee shop get in the way, because sometimes that can feel really intimidating. You could go to a bookstore, you could be on Zoom, you can do a lot of different things. The SIP leaders are trained, so it's not like this weird thing or like a date or anything like that. It's totally just a chat. And I'm like practicing my language, like I'm trying to learn Spanish, Portuguese, and French every single day, but it's never gonna be enough because I'm so dumb, I'm just dumb. But like, you know, I'm like literally, I know that I probably know someone like Taisha or some other people who speak English and Spanish, and they can come with me to our coffee. So let's get coffee, we'll figure it out. Why are you laughing? Just being honest.
I'm laughing because Brooklyn has been doing an app with the languages, and so what I hear early in the morning is the bing. Bing. I'm assuming she's getting something right.
Duolingo, baby. Just do it.
And then also her English accent in French is fun. Well, we don't want to keep you here too much longer, and so I just want to encourage you as we close up. First thing is I want to say this. I want to say, for those of you who may be afraid to have coffee with somebody that you don't know, chances are you can invite people that you do know to have coffee with you on a regular basis, and it would be much needed. And it would have great benefit. And so there may be people here in this room that you know. It could be husband and wife. It could be any relationship. But the point is to start with somebody. Start with somebody who you'll say, you know what, twice a month we'll get together and we'll have coffee. Something else that I would say is it's not a huge time commitment. You know, we hear Carlos talking about small groups. Small groups often last 2 hours. It's very rare that you go to a small group that doesn't last any shorter than 2 hours. This is like 30 to 45 minutes that you can get together and just be able to hear each other's stories out. And so it's a low time commitment. And so I would say if you're terrified of meeting with somebody you don't know, start with somebody that you do know. And then the last thing is we would love for some of you who have been a part of our church to become a SIP leader. And so I'm looking out and I'm seeing quite a few of you here who have been a part of our church for a good amount of time. And my challenge to you tonight would be to say, you know what, I want to be a part of connecting those who are unconnected. And I want to do that by becoming a SIP leader. And so Mitchell's going to be out there at the table that we're calling the Say Yes table, because we want you to say yes to what God wants to do in you and through you. And if you will stop out there and help us already begin to expand the network by signing you up to become a SIP leader who will go to our very next training. There was one more thing that I needed to say, and I'm getting old. Yeah, I do have those. I lost it. It's gone. So we have, for those of you who ask questions, we have 5 $10 gift cards to go take someone to coffee. So if you asked a question, we'd love for you to come up here after I say amen and take this gift card, and you're going to have coffee with someone at Hillcrest Coffee, I believe, and Hillcrest Pressed Coffee, and and start this thing. So please stop on your way out and speak to Mitchell and sign up to be a part of it. Oh, here's what I was going to say. It came back to me.
No, it's too late. You can't,
No, I have to. So I sent out a survey to our church through our email and asked you to let us know how connected you are. And so in that survey, based on how you answered 10 different questions, it would pop back to you what your score is from being disconnected to connected. And we had about 50 people fill out that survey, and almost 70% of you fall into the category of being disconnected or somewhat connected. 70% of the 50 people who filled out the survey need to be more connected. So my prayer tonight as I close is that we'll be a church that say, I'll do it. I'll help connect the unconnected. So let's pray. God, thank you for getting this group of people together up here on the stage who have been working really hard to produce something and make something that we feel like is something you put into our imagination, because you are a God that wants to connect with us. You are bigger, stronger, wiser, and able to settle us when our hearts aren't able to contain themselves. And so, God, I pray that as we just give a glimpse tonight of what the Coffee Network is about, that it would inspire people in this room to realize that you put people on this earth to carry burdens together. And it's as easy as just sharing and listening to other people's stories. We don't need answers. We just need humans who have ears and the ability and the patience to listen. And so, God, I pray that this would be something tonight that helps us move into our launch in the fall, so that we have so many people interested, that every person at Somos Church has somebody who would love to have coffee with them. And God, we pray that you would bless all the work that we've done and all the courage that we're willing to have to be able to do your work in this world. In your name, we pray. Amen. You can stop and have a coffee on the way out. Thanks for coming tonight. Please stop and talk to Mitchell or one of us up here. We do have these coffee gift cards. So everybody clap your hands and say thank you for everybody showing up tonight. Y'all have a good night. Remio, take us out with some good music, man. There we go.